My name is Nancy. I'm with GrowthZone. Welcome to 5 Strategic Focus Areas for 2023 Planning, sponsored by GrowthZone. Visit growthzone.com to learn more about GrowthZone software for associations and chambers of commerce and to schedule a one-to-one tour of the software. Just as a reminder, all attendees today are going to receive an email within about 24 hours of today's session. It will include a link to the webinar recording. The live attendees will get a CAE credit certificate for attending. And let's see, we've got, oh, the chat is busy. We've got people logging in from all over the place. Why don't we just jump right into things today? Our presenter today is membership industry coach and trainer, Shari Pash. And Shari is going to tell us a little bit about herself and jump right in.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, Nancy. Thanks for Amy for coordinating today. And I'm excited always to be on these webinars. So with webinars, I know I don't get to see all of you who are logging in and chatting there, but it's good to know you're out there. And I know I've got a lot of industry friends who are on the session today. My name is Shari Pash. I know some of you, I don't know many of you, I'm sure. So my work is around membership growth. I'm a membership growth strategist, and I spent my years at Michigan State University and about 27 years there. And last 12 years, I've had my own work that I'm doing, and I work with chambers and associations across the US and Canada. I'm on faculty for IOM, Institute of Organizational Management, and I do a lot of national conferences through ACCE, NAHB. I'm at a conference or on site with clients almost every week of the year, it seems like. So I'm excited to be virtual with you guys today. And in our session today, we're going to focus a lot on measure. There's a lot to measure, right? But we're going to focus on the membership piece of that today. And so I know there's large organizations, small organizations that are on the call today. Some have 1 or 2 people for their staff. Others of you have 10, 15, 20 or more even. So I'm hoping there'll be a little something for everyone. How you do membership is very different for state and national versus some local organizations. But again, I like to keep it really informal. Feel free to ask questions. And I told Nancy to feel free to interrupt at any point where there's a really relevant question that might be of interest for the group as a whole. So again, we'll just kind of kick in here and we'll start working on membership success or membership success measurements. So there is so much that we could measure and why, but we want to start to look at where have we been this year? What's worked this year? And what are we going to look at doing differently for 2023? Or what are we going to kind of keep the same, right? Remain because it's been successful. So one of the first questions we need to see is, are we on target for meeting our goals at this point for 2022? What goals are we meeting? What goals are we not meeting? Now, this is not new. You guys are doing that, I have no doubt, all through the month. But some of the things we talk about, you may say, we're not there yet. So we need to implement some of these for starting of the year. If you don't have a lot of data in measurements and metrics, you might take a couple tips from this session and decide you're going to implement those for next year so that you can start to build that history. You'll have that data in another year then to compare to, those PACE reports we want to always look at. So let's first look at, on a weekly basis, if you are the membership team or you have a membership team, we want to make sure that we're looking weekly at that daily production, the goals, what that you had in the actual measurements. So when we look at daily, it's engagement, it's recruitment, it's new calls versus old calls, or repeat calls, I guess I would call those. So we want to start to think about, do you have measurements, not so that you know what your team is doing, but more so you can see what trends are working, basically, what's working out there. I've often where I get on site with them and they'll say, we're looking to increase our membership production. But when you don't have any data to work from, it's very hard to know where you need to grow. So we want to start to look at what are those measurements, what are the activities that you're doing. When you do phone versus in person, we want to start to realize what that looks like. We're going to go into that in just a little bit more detail. Sales cycle movement. We want to know how many people do we move through the process of your more or less sales cycle. And don't forget, the renewal process is a sales cycle as well. We're not just talking about recruitment, because not everybody I know has a team a size where you can go do outgoing recruitment. Some do, some don't, that are on the webinar today. So either way, for your renewal process and for your sales process, are they moving through the cycle? How have we done that this year? Where are we at to date? Did our pipeline flow? Is our funnel, fairly empty at this time of year? But we want to make sure that we're seeing movement through that cycle consistently through the year. So if something maybe needs to be tweaked or fixed a little bit as you go into 2023. Now, monthly, I think it's really important for us to look at metrics. And a lot of you prepare these kind of numbers for your board meetings anyway. But I also often I'll have a client say, or at a conference, I'll hear people say, I don't want my people just doing reports. I want them selling. But in order to be strategic and relevant and see what's working, we have to have some metrics and some measurements in place for those accountabilities, right? We have to know who's a member, who's sustaining, who's not, what type of activities pay off, because we often talk about our members' ROI, but you need an ROI for the work that you do at your organization, your membership team. Each one, if it's a half person or a full-time person or many full-time people, you've got to have an ROI for that work that they're doing. So without metrics, it's hard for us to know what's working and how do we do more of what's working, right? So PACE, I always like PACE reports where we're comparing to this time of year to last year at this time. Each quarter, first quarter to first quarter last year. And really looking at things like in that PACE, new members. Now, some people, I was just at a conference recently and was talking with a few chambers, and they were saying we only have a new member goal. But I encourage you to make sure that we've got all three of these, a new member goal, a net new member goal, and a membership revenue goal. And that's what you want to look at year to date. Where are you at with your new members and the net new members? That's what we're striving for at the end of the year. If you have 500 or 5,000 members, are you trying to get to 525? Are you trying to get to 5,100? What does that look like? But we have to have that net member, because we can get those new members in and we think, gosh, 100 new members this year was huge, but you lost 150. So our new member goal has to be above to get that new or that net member to grow. And you all know that, but it's a measurement we want to make sure to be watching throughout the year. And when where you're at today, this close to the end of the year, what does that look like? And if you're falling short of the net members, we know next year we've got to set a new goal for new members that helps pace us above our net members right now. And membership revenue. I always say we can put revenue in the bank. We can't put members in the bank. So we have to be focused on that new member revenue as well as that net or the new member number, because the number is important. Because I know for advocacy work, if you do advocacy sponsorships, they want to see that exposure, that large volume, that large voice you represent. But we have to focus on that membership revenue number as well. We don't want to just get members to get them, do we? Because that's not sustainable. Those members will churn at the end of the year. So opposed to saying we want 525 members, we want 475 quality members that sustain and support the mission of our organization. So again, looking to see where you're at with some of these numbers and then wrapping that up for this year and then setting those goals for next year. And a lot of you are setting goals right now because you're in the budget mode. Same thing with engagement. When you think about monthly, what does that look like for us for engagement? We know engagement has a lot of different measures, from social media to emails, to voicemails, hopefully phone, in person. Do we get out to see people? All those different member engagement touches, we want to see where are you and your team most effective. If you actually take chunks of time and are out meeting with members in person with appointments, do you see a better return on those invoices being returned sooner when you're able to do that type of engagement? Or can you accomplish the same thing by phone? So what brought you success this year? If you have the weekly measurement reports that allow you to see phone versus outside versus email, you want to see what's been working. Lay those reports out and take a look at that. If you don't have those reports, we'll talk more about that, but that's something we want to make sure that we're implementing so you can see what worked this year, or if you're not at the number you want right now, you can look back to see what do we need to do more of, what does work, and what are we not doing. Okay, let's see. So again, weekly, monthly, quarterly, lots of things come in. Lead source for new members. Right now, you want to run that report from your system. There should be a custom field for that in your Chamber Master Growth Zone systems. That what's the lead source of new members? Are they coming to you? Are they just coming in through your website or walking in? Or are you doing lead sources by LinkedIn? I found this prospect on LinkedIn. This one was at our economic summit and they were a non-member. You want to very specifically measure the lead source. And this is one of the biggest tools to look at here at the end of the year. What brought you your sustainable members by source, basically? We want those members who are, if you've seen me teach, I do ABCs, you know, the high level, medium level, those that churn. A lot of detail goes into that, but that's a quick snapshot. So if I find a lead source that brings me A or B level members, which are your higher level, your sustainable members, I want to do more of that lead source, right? But if I have a lot of new members and they're that lower level churning type member coming in and coming out or leaving out, what's the lead source for those? So I don't just keep doing the lead source that's bringing me those small members that maybe aren't your sustainable. I want to do more of the lead source that brought those sustainable A, B level members in. I hope that makes sense. Be sure to ask questions if you have any on that. So lead source is a really important field, and make that be a drop down where you're really choosing specific areas, not just chamber event or association event. Was it a signature event, an economic summit, an industry training? What was the event? So you know this event, if we get prospects to it, will convert to members. And so that's where really using that lead source field. And again, if you see that 60% of your members are coming to you, that's fantastic for your brand, but are these sustainable members? And if that's so, how do you as a membership team make a bigger impact for your organization by going out and finding very specific higher level members? So that's why it's really important to really look at that lead source piece, okay? And I know I spent a lot of time right on this one slide, but this is a piece I think is really important for those metrics and measurements to look at every quarter, really. I would not save this for year end, but since we are coming on year end, this makes sense to look at the full year and make your strategies going forward based on the information that you've gathered on these different reports. Now, also the drop member every quarter. I mean, some people do it just annually, but I would do it every quarter to look at the full analysis of your drop members. Are they that A, B, or C level? And some of you may use different measurements for kind of the quality of that member. Again, we just talk about that internally. But when you think about that, what industries are they in? Geographically, where are these members? Are they in their first year of business? Do they have a large footprint in your state or county or community? There's so many things we want to look at, but you want to get the DNA of that dropped member. And right now, at the end of the year, is a time to look at what trend do you see. Sometimes when we look each quarter, we see a little bit, but you put it all together now here at the end of the year, and you really do an analysis and pull out those trends that should drive your strategy for both engagement and recruitment for 2023. So really important to do that deep dive into that dropped analysis and looking at who's on their leadership team. So many things you can look at going into that dropped analysis. Okay, so this is the time of year to do that for sure. Yeah, so just again, you want to see what's working, what do you want to continue, and where are you spending time and resources that it's not paying off for you, right? Are you getting the right members in? Are they sustainable? How do you find more of those right members? So again, really review these measurements, wrap the year up strong, and then start the new year with really looking at what you can do differently or what you can continue. So the same thing, we're going to talk a little bit about that, just analyzing. I just talked a little bit more in detail on those drop members, but you also want to look at who is sustaining, who is staying with you after their first year, after their second year. And then we know from there it gets stronger. So looking at that right now, who joined over a year ago and has renewed. We want to definitely, again, drive strategy towards those who are sustaining with you. Your advocacy successes, we've got to gather those because that's a big part of what we talk about in membership if you have advocacy work that you do, right? Analytics, really important. Looking at those category clicks. As membership people, we should always have our category report kind of staple, kind of up on our bulletin board or a PDF that you can pull up quickly. So when you're talking to a member, or especially when you're talking about a renewal and somebody says, I haven't seen value, and you all know that your category clicks, your category received, 5,000 clicks this year. What would just 1% of that mean for you for new business? If you're an industry association, you're going to have different reasons people are clicking into your categories, your member categories. But it's really important that we know and understand who is getting that interaction through your analytics report. Same thing with your newsletter. The click rate, we always have looked at open rates, but we know the click rate is actually a much more relevant measure of engagement. So when you think about your newsletter click rates, I would say this is the time of year to do an analysis. This is a great intern project maybe because it does take some time, but wouldn't it be great to know, we know yes, we have a 15%, 5%, whatever it is, click rate in your newsletter, but who's clicking? Are they based on, again, are they a small business, a large business? Are they your A-level members, your B-level members? Who's clicking? Because we may think that we're really being relevant with our newsletter, which I'm sure most of you are, but our click rates will tell us if we're not getting the click-throughs on some of the information we're putting in there, we know that may not be the information people are looking for. But we've got to take that time to really analyze those click rates so we can continue in 2023 by populating our newsletter or emails, e-newsletters, whatever you call yours sending out. We've got to get it to where our click rates are going up because that's true engagement then. And we want to know what sectors of our members, it could be very well rounded, but is there a certain sector we're not seeing clicking into our information? And is there something more that segment or sector needs from us? So these are just things I know that I've worked with and that the clients I work with are really important for them in determining that. Your web page demand. What are your most clicked pages on your website? We want to use that info, that information when we're messaging to prospects, when we're talking to members. If you're seeing a large amount of clicks going onto your resource page, we want to make sure when we're talking with members, we're mentioning our resource page because people are finding it, but do all of your members, do your prospects, is that something they're interested in? So again, just understanding that web page demand. And if you have an area that you always kind of tote or talk about, and it's really not even a page that's clicked a lot, we want to maybe shift up that messaging. So again, this is a great time of year to look at all these different analytics that you could be using to really set your strategy for next year and to see what worked this year. What would you do different next year? Okay, so a little bit more on measurements. Again, this is kind of that path to success, that measurements to success. What activities worked for you and your team this year? Because this is what brings that accountability, those outcomes for your new staff, your current staff. So we want to start to look at activity types. And if you don't do that right now, and this is where I say, people say, I don't want my people doing reports all day. It does not take that long for us to measure, especially if you're using your GrowthZone or ChamberMaster or any data software system accurately. So activity types, we want to know new recruitment calls that were made this year versus repeat. Are we kind of expanding our network? Or are we just following up with the same people that are in our database? So we want to make sure we have our activity types matching your communication, or your task types are matching what your maybe report has on it as well. So you can run some of these reports right out of GrowthZone. I know others you may want to do in Excel and drop your data from the software into. There's reasons I like dropping it into a report that I can see a much bigger summary on. But activity types, what activity types do you need to measure? Should you have measured this year that you now wish you had? How much engagement is done by phone, by email, or in person? And again, these are really easy to track in your software systems, but we have to know what we're doing if we want to grow or repeat a great year. If you had a successful year, why was it a success? When you think about that, was it a success based on, what your team is doing? Maybe just the climate of the industry right now. But I say we need to know what made it a success so we can do more of that. The only way for us to know that is to have it in the system and set up a system that's super easy to use. Again, that's where that kind of accountability to use our database really comes into play. But you want to start to look at the same with member engagement, recruitment measures, your new member forecast. Can you run a report that shows the amount of new member revenue you are expecting by the end of the year, or kicking the beginning of the year off? And I know in GrowthZone, there's the member recruitment module that allows you to do just that. In Chamber Master, there's some custom fields that we can put together to create that type of a report. And if you are maybe somebody who's not using one of those systems, I highly recommend you are, but if you're not, your system, I'm sure, can do this as well. And making sure you're on target with your plans. You most likely have an engagement plan, but do we have a recruitment plan that we're staying on target with? And does our engagement plan include relevant engagement pieces, or simply when we touch them every 3 to 6 months through the year? So I'm a big proponent of having an engagement plan that is more than just those emails that go out, but how does your full team of volunteers or staff play a role, but relevant conversations? And if you're documenting your conversations in your data management system, in GrowthZone or Chamber Master, who's ever doing that engagement touch can continue the conversation that's already happened. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit further here. But this is where, again, making sure that you have data to pull out the trends here at the end of the year. What's your strategy in using measurements? A lot of us gather the information, but we don't ever give ourselves permission to stop and pull that information out and actually set a strategy from it and use those measurements, use those metrics. So again, when you have a new team, start them out on the right foot, that they're using these different types of metrics and that you've got some activity types put together that really do give you a good picture of the work that you do. We don't want to know you're just doing a recruitment call. Is this is this a repeat? Same with engagement. Is this an in-person, on the phone, or is it an email? You've got to know what you're doing that has an ROI so we do more of it. Again, if it's set up in the system right, it's a couple minutes at the end of a day to see what we didn't enter right while we're working on it. So again, hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Another thing is setting you or your team up for success. We know how to onboard members, but how do we onboard a new staff person? And I say this, even though a lot of you have been with your organizations for a long time, I've been seeing a lot of turnover in the industry right now. And this is also just a way to kind of shore up those that have been with you, came on during the pandemic when they were just reacting to things. We didn't really have time to kind of implement a strong onboarding process. So if you're one of those thinking about these as well. So again, how do we onboard a new membership person or staff person for success? The interviewing and hiring, if you're here, you've already been hired and all, but if you're somebody who is interviewing, again, deliver those membership growth outcomes. Be sure to ask about that during the interview process. So a lot of really strong questions we can do, but we've got to make sure we're interviewing and hiring the right people. Develop an onboarding plan that sets new staff and team members up for success, right? Do you have a training schedule for them? Give them time to learn. Don't toss them here. I can't tell you how many times I hear from new executive directors or new membership staff. They started and basically they said, here's the phone, here's our membership directory, there's our website. more or less good luck. So we want to make sure that we're setting it up with strong training and onboarding. So at the end of the year here, if you're looking to grow next year, or you've hired people this year, this is the time to look at this piece. Are you creating and implementing production measurements for recruitment and engagement? If you're getting ready to hire, you've been approved to add a new person next year, get these tools in place so you start out strong. And as you wrap this year up, if you had new people this year, are these things in place? Did these things happen? Even 2 years, if they were hired in 2021, it was still a crazy time. Maybe it's time to go back and make sure that we've done these. Understanding the importance of accountability with these measurements, right? Creating direction and strategy from the data you've learned. So again, there's a lot. I could do a whole session just on these pieces. How do we onboard? In fact, I did one for ACCE a year or two ago on onboarding for success. So that's a really big part. I know this is kind of looking at strategies for next year, wrapping up this year. This is a key one. Is your team set up for success? And do you have these things in place for going into 2023? I know there's a lot of people who are growing and adding people. So this is a key step. Okay. All right, well, that was number one. So anyway, number two, time to plan really does help you clarify. It helps you clarify this year, and it helps you clarify next year. So I want you to kind of stop and think about each of these as I talk through them. But, thinking, I like to do this as you put together your plan. Hopefully you each have a weekly plan that you put together. On the Friday of each week, you've got your plan for next week all created. You've got appointments made where you don't have appointments on phone or in person. If you are someone who does engagement and recruitment work, that you now have who you're going to be calling during those times. So making a plan and working a plan is how we maximize our production. So we're going to focus on those goals. So thinking about what is one thing, I always use this one thing piece, read a book a few years ago about that, but what is one thing I did or can do to ensure that I hit my goals? So if you're reviewing your year, what is one thing that you did to ensure you hit your goals? And if you haven't, thinking about for 2023. So what does that mean? What did I do to hit my goals? Did I really block out serious recruitment and engagement time on my calendar? Did you color block? Anyone who knows me knows I love the color blocking for our calendar. So when you color block, did you block time to be intentional on hitting your goals? Did you block enough time to even hit your goals? That's why I like what I call red zone, because do you have enough red blocks on your week to even hit the goals that you have? And oftentimes I hear, no, I don't. So we're not going to hit our goals if we don't have the time to put into the engagement or recruitment work. What's one thing I did or can do to help my team? Your team may be a volunteer team. It may be a staff team. It may be your coworkers. So again, what's one thing there? What's the one thing what's the one thing I did or can do to make us more profitable, increase our revenue? What's something in your work that can do that? What's one thing we did or can do to improve our members' experience? It's a great end of the year questions. What's the one thing we did or can do to increase member engagement? Everybody wants more member engagement. Every conference I speak at, the hands all go up. We want more member engagement. But what do you want? Do you want more people clicking into your social media? Do you want more people supporting your advocacy? Do you want more people clicking in that newsletter? Do you want more people attending? We always want that we know that's not always the reality right now. But what is it you want when you say you want more member engagement? So what's one thing you can do next year to increase member engagement? And what is it specifically we want? And then put a measurement in place with it. What's one thing we did or can do to become more strategic in our work with our board, especially if you're an executive director on here of a small organization, so you're maybe on this membership session. What's one thing you can do to be more strategic with working with your board? And if you don't report to your board, perhaps, if you're a membership staff person on here, what's one thing we did or can do to become more strategic when I work with the leaders of our organization? It could be your VPs or someone like that. So just thinking again, how do you stop to clarify, stop to plan? Out of 520 work hours in a quarter, how many hours are you taking out each quarter to do some of this planning? Again, you can have a great prospect list and strategy, but if you aren't able to make the time for outgoing recruitment or engagement, it won't really matter how great of a plan you have if we aren't able to block our calendar and get that work done. So best intentions, but they don't always become a reality. So again, and when you start to look at the time, when you start to block your calendar to see how you hit your goals, remember, is the time you're blocking being used on your churning level members or those good, strong, sustainable members for both engagement and recruitment? So again, spend your time on the member DNA and the prospect levels that impact your goals. So one thing I did or can do to ensure that I hit my goals, if you have a membership revenue goal, it's not always just getting those business, the entry level for your industry or for your chamber. It's not getting that first level member. It's getting 1 or 2 levels above. That's how you hit those revenue goals. So just again, what's one thing I could do next year? Maybe part of my goal is to recruit and retain more of that next level up member. Okay. I should be pausing here. So if there's questions, Nancy, you can interrupt me. So feel free to if there are some. All right, we're going to just kind of keep going then. And so let's see, tools for success. That's our number 3 here. So when we start to look at this, do we have the tools in place that we needed? Maybe one thing to get to our goals is we need to really increase our tools that we have for our team and for ourselves. So one thing I would recommend looking at here at the end of the year with your recruitment and engagement strategy plans. How did you do? Hopefully you're looking at that each month, so you know you're right on target, or you know the areas that you did not get to accomplish and you've made a note on why. So as you create the plans for next year, you have a good base to work from. But that's the thing I would recommend on your recruitment and engagement plans is, as the year goes, to make sure you're making notes on that plan. At the end of each month, you kind of do a quick summary so that if you did not do a strategy, you know why, and how do we make sure we're able to build that into this year, or do we change that strategy up? So we want to make sure that we're on target with it throughout the year, because that end of the year comes like that, doesn't it? We can be putting out fires all year long for our industry. All of a sudden, this time of year comes, we're looking at our membership numbers or our recruitment and engagement plan, and we've not accomplished them because it wasn't on fire until we're looking at our year-end numbers. Some of you may be feeling like you're in that right now. So again, we want to make sure that you've got your plan in place, your non-dues revenue strategy plan too. That may involve you in membership, it may not, but the non-dues revenue is a strategy now, and we've got to make sure we've got that plan in place for the next year, what worked this year. If you found that you were depending too much on membership revenue and that may have dropped over the last 2 or 3 years, we've got to make sure we have that strong non-dues revenue strategy plan. And that's most every client I talk with now in board session I do, that's a big part of our planning now, is non-dues revenue. So making sure you have that in place, right? And if you don't have some of these things we're talking about, it's okay. If you are looking at next year, maybe you're even bringing in a new staff person, or you have the team you have now, but you make time to create some of these. Just depends how quick you want to have a plan like this up and going for the new year. So when you think about this, other tools, a lot of you have good sales tools, because that's all I'll call them. They're sales tools for recruitment, engagement, renewal. We need to have those things. Discovery worksheets. Do you have, how do you learn the priorities and motivations of your members and of your prospects? We have to have that discovery worksheet that goes through, questions about what's important to them. But more important, you have a solution, but we just don't want to tell them all about our solutions. We want to ask them questions that allow you to then become a solution, correct? That's this slide right here is an entire session. So, but discovery worksheets are really important. And feel free to always email after this, and we can talk more about what that means. And I'll have a place that you can sign up, and I can send out a template sample for that too. But benefit statements as well, especially when you have new people on your team. Maybe you don't have new people or turnover, but a lot of organizations do right now. So when I ask a question, for instance, do you offer a leadership program? Sorry, that's what we do. So you might ask the person, how do you develop leaders at your company? And they may say, we don't have the time for that. Now I want to be able to talk about the leadership program we offer. But if I just go in telling them about the leadership program we offer, they're not connecting it. But if they heard me say that I have that need, then you can come in with that solution. So I don't want to go into each of these. I just really want to say that we have to have those tools for success and play. So when you look at this year, look at the tools you've had, review what worked. What tools did your team use? What tools did you use? And if we didn't have tools, we want to know that that's a strategy for early year, is to create those tools, or in December, towards those holidays and such. So having those discovery worksheets, having your benefit statements that describe in how layman's terms, how all the different things, all the values that you offer, basically. Okay, so sales tools, got to have those sales tools. How do you get appointments? How do you create that urgency to where people invest sooner than making you follow up with them and follow up with them? That we have to cut that follow up out, because each time you're following up, we're not doing another engagement call or another new recruitment call. So there are tools you can use that tighten that up, but making sure you've got sales tools and you have those metrics in place. So again, get your tools. No one cooks in the kitchen in your member restaurants without having a whole set of cooking tools. None of your home builders are going out and building a home without an entire toolbox. It's hard for us as an organization to be successful without an entire toolbox to use for member recruitment and engagement. So that's a fun name for a future session, isn't it? Our toolbox. So anyway, let's see. So I think that's the main thing. Same thing with some of these tools I'm talking about, you guys, is don't forget the sponsorship in here, because the end of the year, we need to be looking. A lot of you as membership team also do your sponsorship sales. All these same things we're talking about. So there should be a sponsorship revenue plan, having sponsorship tools in play as well, and your custom fields and things for lead sources for sponsors. So everything we're talking about, make sure to put into sponsorship as well, right? And don't forget weekly coaching time with your team, with yourself, whichever, but we just can't say, here it is, good luck. We've got to give our teams, and you yourselves have to create for yourself some of these tools and things that will help you be successful. And before you're going out next year, have those tools in place. If you're hiring a new person, or if you are a new person, we just cannot send people out blindly that after 2 days of figuring out how to answer the phone and they're on their own. Really giving tools to put these things together. All right, so number 4, member engagement strategy. Again, successes from the year. What would you do different next year? What worked, what didn't work? How would you like your engagement? We just talked about that and how you'd measure that. This is a great staff or board. If you're smaller, you have an ambassador team or maybe a membership committee, great project for them. What does member engagement look like for us? If you are feeling like your engagement wasn't as strong as you wanted, it's taking time to analyze that on some of those metrics we used earlier. But we have to understand if it was successful this year. If you saw your retention grow, and you're retaining more members, then it's working. If you are not where you want to be yet, that's where we've got to look at the strategies that you're putting into play and how are you measuring member engagement, and are we measuring the right things for member engagement? You may be successful because attendance went down. You're thinking you need more member engagement. However, your retention stayed, but you now have a huge social media following. You have people who are creating experiences through maybe some of the social media you do, or with some of the classes maybe you're someone who does continuing education and licensing. So there's all different ways that we measure engagement now. So we have to be sure that for your type of organization, first you understand what engagement you want, and is it growing? And if not, what would you do different next year? So just a little bit of a reminder on that one. All right, maximizing your database. This is one I think I use at pretty much every conference I talk at. It's so important. It's a foundational tool for member engagement and truly recruitment as well. So we have to give ourselves time to collect this data and then analyze it. So when you think about data, especially custom fields in both GrowthZone and Chamber Master, your custom fields are so powerful. This is where you want to be able to pull up any member's record and hopefully run a report even for the end of the year here. What was the primary reason that this member invested or all of our members invested? Wouldn't it be great to see what that ratio is? But especially when you're talking to a member here, we've got to be able to know the primary reason that they invested so that you can immediately talk to that point when you're having an engagement conversation. So this is the type of data to collect, and right now is the time of year to review it. And or if you've not collected some of these, many of you have lots of other custom fields I know you track. So these are just some I recommend on top of what you do. And if you don't have these, start next year so you can be collecting it and use that going forward. Wouldn't it be great to know the fiscal year of your members? So that right now we think everyone's doing their budget, but if someone's budget started October 1 or July 1, they're well into their money already. They're into their budget year. So we've got to know that we've got to ask for sponsorship dollars, member upgrades, support with advocacy. Any of those things we need to be doing at a whole different time of year than right now. So it's really important that we can run the reports on fiscal year. If you are an organization that has advocacy or does advocacy, wouldn't it be great to be able to run a report for your governmental affairs team that says these are all the members that have an interest in environmental work, and if there's an environmental bill coming up. So I would highly recommend you start to track those advocacy interests, training interests, sponsorship. That's that bullion, that check yes or no. You could be talking to members today or at the end of the year and they go, yeah, I'd really like to be a sponsor. Budgets are tight, but I hope next year I'm able to. Or perhaps they're hiring a new VP of marketing that's going to make those decisions. Check that box. So when you get ready to work on that sponsorship catalog or find new sponsors, you can just run that report and work right through on here's a warm list of people who've shown an interest in sponsorship already. So again, lots of different fields you can track. DEI tracking, prospect levels, are they A, B, or C's, or whatever rating you put on your members or prospects. So, but yeah, just again, track, but remember to stop and pull out and use the data to guide your strategy. So what did you learn this year from your data, and what could you learn from your data? So if you've been collecting them, be sure to take that time now at the end of the year to pull that data out. If you're not, lead source, fiscal year, there's some primary reason for investing, all of those need to be tracked in there. So if you don't have those, that's a great start of the year for 2023 that you're going to put a little bit more intentional effort on your data collection and on your data gathering. Okay. Real quick, gosh, we are rolling along here in time, aren't we? The other thing is number 5, kind of the last one is you're looking at this for end of the year here, look at your community marketing, right? It's not just simply signing new members. It's about connecting and engaging with that existing member that you have to get to the point where they become so loyal that they're your authentic brand ambassador, more or less, right? Community marketing is about the conversation. Think about your conversations this past year. Did your members feel that wow in that conversation from you? And we don't mean just conversation, talking one-on-one, that's ideal. Even in social media, was there a conversation? You know, what does that look like? You know, the term community is all about associations and chambers. So again, community adds to your overall experience. And some of you may have been focusing on this for a while, but how do we create authentic conversations? How did you create community this year? And how do you strengthen that in 2023 or put that as a goal going forward? So again, community is creating that community of conversations, not just followers, right? So when you think about that, we don't want just followers, we want community from the work that we're doing. And again, creating that community, you know, do it by the ABCs more or less. Again, your different level members, what's the conversation each of our different demographics or audiences need. And you all know community, how do you create that? These social media platforms, polls and questions, get people engaging. That one-on-one interaction is never going to get old. People still want to connect in person and by phone. Even doing, you know, a 10-minute Tuesday, grab 10 members together on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. and have them come together, be intentional on who you're pulling together. So lots of different ways you can create that community. But I just like to put that in there because I think it's reviewing this year. How did we do with creating community within our membership, within our organization, and what do we look at for next year to build that community. The last one I think I'm going to put up here is kind of that 5+ is through all of this, we've got to remember the foundational tips for recruiting, renewing, sponsorship, relational connection. This is what you look at this year. As a membership team, a membership person, did we have our process strong that allowed us to truly recruit and retain and engage members beyond just who's walking in the door, taking who's coming in, renewing for, I guess basically I break it down to saying, are you chasing and convincing, or are you motivating and compelling? Are you chasing and convincing somebody to invest with your organization, to renew with your organization, or partway through the conversation, are they saying, time out, how am I not a part of all of this? Or of course, when I renew, there's no question, because you're such a part of my business strategy that I would renew. So these are always on trend. Look at last year. How many appointments did you get to book for member conversations, for engagement, for prospects, or did we just do the drop-by type process? So again, how do you get those appointments? Well, how many did you get last year? How many do you want next year? These types of things should be in those goals you have. How did I learn priorities and motivations? Did I document that so I can run a report now on what our members' priorities and motivations are? Sharing and connecting those solutions. Do we have benefit statements so everyone in our organization, volunteer or staff, can share and connect what solutions are that we offer our members? And always testing the waters. Are what you're talking about important to that particular member, right? Or to that prospect? Manage objections. I encourage you with your staff, or if you don't have a staff and it's a team of a membership committee, do a managing objections session. What's the top 2 objections to renewing or to becoming an investor, and be ready to overcome those and be consistent and motivate people to renew and invest. Don't chase them. Okay, and then always have that next step scheduled. These are the things we can look at from this year. How did you do with these? And where do we want to grow next year? Where do we want to become stronger? Which of these steps do we need to strengthen? Because again, this slide right here is an entire full day session, truly. But you all know the basics of these, or many of you do. If these are reminders, fantastic. If these are new ideas to you, maybe you're into the sales role and you're not a salesperson, this is a great webinar for down the road, one of these, just the 5+ here. But anyway, that is, I think, the end of my official session. So if there is any interest in what I offer, I'm talking about handouts, templates, things like that, feel free to sign up. My text to sign up here. I don't have time to spam you with anything, so don't worry about that. But I do offer virtual trainings quite often, online courses creating right now. So feel free to pop in there. Otherwise, I'm going to come back to this real quick. Here's my contact information. Feel free to email anytime. I do feel it's one of my roles is to be a resource, and love to talk, answer questions, things like that. I don't know if there's been some questions along the way here, but I'll let Nancy pop in if there are any. I know we're really already close on time here, so I'm going to leave it up here to say, don't forget to get a demo if you're not using this system, and I'll let Nancy kind of wrap it up there. But you guys, thanks for giving me an hour. I hope everybody on here, I know there's a lot of you on here, all have at least one tip or tool to review for this year and to kick next year off strong.
Thank you so much, Shari. Oh, your webinars are so well attended and everybody gets so excited. We're so happy that you could be with us today. GrowthZone, yes, we've been the sponsor of this session today. If you'd like to learn more about GrowthZone or see a product tour or get a one-to-one demo, go to GrowthZone.com and you can sign up there. It doesn't look like we have many questions other than, is the session being recorded? Yes, it is. Everyone who registers will get a copy of the recording in an email within the next 24 hours. What I'd love to see in the comments real quick, topics for future webinars that we would give. I know Shari presents on a number of topics, but it'd be wonderful to see in the comments ideas for topics for our future webinars. With that, again, thank you, Shari. And I think that's good. Everybody have a really great day.
Fantastic. Good to see everybody.
Bye.